Now, but that's why we need to understand God's laws as not just being something physical, but something spiritual as well. So let's take a look here at Genesis chapter 18, verse 25. It says, be it Abraham speaking to God, and it says, be it far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And that's the word shaphat. All right? And in Deuteronomy 16, 18, and 19, I want you to notice here, it says, judges and officers shall you make in all your gates, which the Lord your God gives you. Well, the word judges there basically is the word shoftim. I want you to see that. And the Torah portion is mishpatim. And officers is soter. So I want to show you something. Let's go to the PowerPoint. Okay, here's the judge, shaphat. Judges, plural, you add the yud mem, it's shoftim. And here's our Torah portion, mishpatim. And you can see the commonality of judges, and judgment in these three middle letters. All right? Now, what's fascinating, again, I have up here the ancient picture language, but let me go to this screen so you can see a little bit closer. The word for judge is shaphat. Now, the shin, the first letter, it looks like our capital W, but really it represented teeth. It means teeth. It means to consume or destroy. The letter pei in Hebrew is the mouth, okay, to speak. That last letter, the tet, represents, it means to surround, as of serpent. So what does a judge do from the ancient picture language? He's the one who destroys the mouth of the serpent. Okay, proper judgments is what destroys the mouth of the serpent. Now let's look at the officer. Officer, when you think of officer, who do you think of? A police officer or something, okay? Well, here's that officer, soter. It's to destroy the serpent's head. That's what they're meant to do. And then lastly, we have a scribe. I have here safar, and that is to support the mouth of the head, or the highest, referring to God. That's what a scribe does. He's supporting what God says as he writes. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Now, what I want you to realize as we look at these different types of commandments, I have the English, the Hebrew singular, and the Hebrew plural. A lot of people don't know what's the difference between a commandment, a judgment, a statute, a law. And I believe we have this on a handout at the back table. Nancy's probably going to kill me if I didn't forewarn her. She may not have made copies, but hopefully she did. But I have at the very first, when it talks about a commandment, that's a mitzvah. The plural word is a mitzvot. And then you see judgments, which is like our Torah portion, mishpatim. You see mishpat, and mishpatim is the plural. And then a statute. Now, what's fascinating, well, it's a little bit darker to read. Let's go down the bottom. That's the word that's often translated law, which is Torah or Torot. But that middle one, which is a statute, it's chukah. It has a masculine and a feminine, so that's why I have two different words here. But what I wanted to point out here is that in Art's session that he did earlier, you have Isaac's name right there. That's the root of Isaac's name. And so when we were talking about Isaac's name being changed, okay, from having the tzadeh versus the sheen, it's like this is the covenant, or the statute. Well, what's fascinating about how these are different, the word that makes up statute is that word that's used for like the red heifer. Now, a lot of the commandments of God, we look at them and we can reason with them, don't kill. Well, I can understand that one, so I'll do that one. But then when you look at the ashes of the red heifer, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, really, from a human reasoning standpoint, when you look at, okay, someone walked over a dead body, so you got to go get a bird and a heifer and kill it and mix it with blood and water and sprinkle it on them, and all of a sudden they can walk in the temple. I mean, we look at that, doesn't make any sense at all. But what God says is, look, how many of you as parents know when you have kids, you tell them to do something, you just say, just do it because I said. Well, those commandments, that word for statute is basically those laws that God says to do that is beyond human reasoning, but we just do it. And I think that's fascinating when it comes to Isaac's name, especially Isaac is a type of Yeshua. There's some things that is just hard to understand, but we just believe them. So let's take another way of looking at these. A mitzvah. What is a mitzvah or mitzvot? That's translated as commandment. Those are those obligations that really bond us to God. Why do you think so many people want to do away with the commandments? Because that's the very thing that binds us to God. It's like when Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, right? How many of you know you really get to know somebody when you work with them? Okay? When you work with somebody, you get to know them. When you spend a lot of time with someone, you're with them in a car for 30 hours. Okay? You really get to know that person. Well, the whole purpose of the mitzvot or the commandments is that we could yoke up with God and work with Him so we can get to know each other. So when we're not doing the commandments, what are we doing? We're breaking that relationship that we want to have with God to build. Then you have the mishpatim. Mishpatim, which is our Torah portion, basically is all those civil and criminal laws. Then you have the chuk, which is your ritual connotations, and without reason. Most of those have to do with the temple. They're temple related. They have to do with ritual purity, things like this. And sometimes we just don't know why, but that's what God says, and so we do them. And then lastly, you have Torah, which is teaching or instruction. And so the whole purpose that we have to realize, if we want to draw close to God in spirituality, the way we do that is through physicality, doing those things that He says. And a lot of people, Christians that I talk to, okay, well, we'll throw out all the civil laws, but we'll keep the religious laws or something like that. Well, that's like if any of you sew or you knit or whatever, you start pulling out strands, the whole thing's going to fall apart. You have to look at the Torah as a whole unit. You can't break it up into parts. Just like I said, they had the Supreme Court right there at the temple. Now, in Psalms 119, here we have verse 60 through 63. What did David say? I made haste and did not delay to keep your commandments. Wow, that's David's heart. He says, the bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten your Torah. Now look at this. What does David say? At midnight I will rise to give thanks to you because of your righteous judgments. I'm a companion of all who fear you and of those who keep your commandments. Well, I think David would make a good friend. I think, how many of you think God loved David? I mean, David had his problems, but I think he loved God. What's fascinating here, it says at midnight I will rise to give thanks to you. David played the harp, right? There's a saying that what David would do, he would open his window at night and he would put the harp in the window. And about midnight, the wind would come through, or the Spirit of God, and begin to play on the strings. And that was his alarm clock that he would wake up to begin to praise God. Kind of fascinating. The thing we need to realize too, the Torah was the standard even for the king. Think about this. If there's no Torah, what becomes the standard? Man's opinion.